I'm here with Schwibbs, aka Schwibbs Poker, aka brilliant poker mind and poker coach, who is a two-time WSOP ring winner, one-time WSOP bracelet winner, two-time PA Scoop trophy winner, as I just learned today, and won a trophy from MGM. I'm not exactly sure for what, but he's here to. We're going to go through a cards up replay of the $100 phase final table on US Scoop, and we're going to do a cards up replay, talk through my hands, talk through like other interesting spots for everybody. Schwibbs, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to do this because your stream for this day was just electric. Because not only you had this second place, you also won the Scoop below, which is insane. So congrats on the scores. And yeah, I'm definitely excited to get into these hands.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it was 30 poker's crazy because you can just get absolutely waxed, and then all of a sudden you have like a session, you know, and it's just like all the hard work that you put in.
Usually bank like 20K in a night.
Yeah, it wasn't quite 20K, but it was close to it. After your highest score, it was like 2.5K, and then next, you just casually like rip off, almost a 20K, total score in a night. So yeah, it was, as we've talked about, results don't always necessarily like showcase like how good and how much work someone's put in. And then like eventually like you're going to find your way into it. Oh, you drink bubbly too?
Sorry, I can't keep myself quiet. I love SMF's comment about me drinking bubbly. They didn't have LaCroix at the store, so yeah, that's option number 2 for me.
Great. How's Schwibbs' sound level before we get in there? Can I? Yeah, I think this is good. I could probably your camera's fine. I can make it better, but you look great. You look great. All right. Well,
thanks. Yeah, my camera's definitely not great. It's really inexpensive, so
no, I mean,
apologize for that.
No, same. I mean, I could just like bump up his volume a little bit. All right, let me see if I will do it through. This is do it this way.
I can also do that on my mic. I do have a good mic, that's for sure. I think.
Chad, I bumped up my Chrome volume, so please let me know if that helps at all. And maybe if you could bump up your volume a tad, that would be great.
Yeah.
Well then,
yeah, just did it.
Great. Yeah, just let us know. I'll continue to like adjust the levels. We're even, but sometimes people come through a little softer. All right, well then let's get at it. We're like, this is like the first hand. It's so hard to screen record these the cards up. This is not the right final table. It's about to switch over.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good.
So, question for people out there: King Queen suited, like early position with 13 bigs. Are you just opening for 2, or would you be ripping it as the shorty?
Is he the shortest stack? Yeah, that's a good question. He is the shortest stack, but he's in EP with like more than 14 bigs. So in that context, I usually don't open shove, because what can happen is you open shove and say 2 people get all in behind you, they just both wake up with hands. You could have avoided that spot by just min raising. Someone goes all in, guy goes all in behind. And then you have an immediate ladder right in front of your face. As long as you don't have like kings, aces, you just fold everything. So I would just min raise an EP personally.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I just boosted your level a bit more.
Did this go check on the flop?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd probably just bet range on the flop. Well, this is the tough part with ICM. Button versus big blind. If there's no ICM, then this would just be a range bet board, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but at least close to it. I don't hate the bluff from Coles on the turn, and then I feel like when you get here, I would wind up emptying a lot and losing. But
yeah, well, like a double paired board, it's an interesting. I was thinking about this like because they block like 9-8, 9-7, Like, does that person just call with like trips in position? Like, I mean, I guess I don't know. It was an interesting
I
bluff
don't know how
spot.
much I love. Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I think my answer is they probably don't have trips much. They don't really have boats unless they have an 8 somehow.
Yeah.
I didn't really love that 9s play, just given the positions. Like
Yeah.
the EP opener is gonna have a pretty tight range to begin with, so 9s feels not great, but that's okay.
Yeah. What do you feel about the EP position opener fold and the king queen suited there?
Yeah, I think you probably have to, just given the stacks. Like there's another
Yeah.
couple. There's a 14 big blind, a 20, a 22. I don't think we have any king high calls when we raise an EP. It has such a strong range to begin with. You should really only be opening like 10 to 15% max, and then you only have to defend once you get 3-bet the top third of that. So that's like a 5% range. Something like 9s plus ace queen is going to be good enough.
Yeah.
So king queen suited, I would just pure fold. So I think that's good.
Yeah. Not having the ace probably is a big thing there, I assume.
Yeah, I probably don't have any king high calls. I'd have to check it to know, but I'm pretty confident we wouldn't have any king high calls.
This is one hand where I opened, as I thought through like the ICM, that maybe 8s feels like it's terrible to like fold, but maybe not the best thing to open.
Yeah, this one, these low pit like 8s, 7s, 6s when you're in EP, they tend to start folding a lot, but then you bias toward like ace 10 offsuit still stays in because you have good blockers. So I don't hate this open, but I don't love it either.
Yeah.
Facing the jam here, I'd definitely be pretty happy to fold. I know it's like super results oriented. I can see the guy has queens, but I just don't really expect him to be jamming worse pairs. So you're flipping or dominated mostly, in my opinion. Plus, again, you have a pretty strong range. If 8s is close to the bottom, I don't think you have to call off then.
Yeah. Well, and I think with the stack distribution, it's like it's like you don't really want to take a flip there, like ever.
Yep.
So
this is really interesting. I don't really know necessarily what I would do here because defending feels kind of terrible because you never flop well with this hand.
Yeah.
And that raise, like, I feel like if he has a pair that's like 4s through 8s or 9s, like he might just wind up jamming himself.
Yeah.
So you do have like quite a lot of fold equity. And then flop, I didn't see how big did they bet.
They bet 1. I mean, I probably should have called, but it was like
it's so hard because it's starting to become a pretty important part of your stack, and plus there's ICMs. Like I don't hate folding. That's kind of why I don't love calling. This is a good jam, by the way. I would do the same thing.
How do you feel about the 4s calling in that situation? Like if you
that I don't necessarily love. I would have to check that, but kind of similar. Like if you got jammed on with the 3s, I would just happily fold.
Oh yeah, 100%. I would have folded the 3s.
Yep.
When they flipped
that
over,
one's tougher though because it was a bit shorter, right? There was like it was 12 big blinds effective. Yeah, I'm not sure. I would have to check that one.
And if you're lucky angel here, this is any 2, so it's 1.7 more bigs.
Once it's I think less than 3 big blinds, it's any 2. Or I should say 3 bigs or less.
Yeah, I was
kind of very interested in the 4s though, so I'm gonna just quickly pull something up while there's boring hands.
I know Chippy V is a call, but we get our first ladder here, which was nice. Always nice when flips for the shorties, they lose their flips and you're not a big stack.
Yeah, I just checked like a similar spot, and the bottom was 6s. So, but it also like it's calling ace 5 off though. So like the range gets kind of warped in like a weird way relative to Chippy V. You wouldn't really see a range like that in Chippy V.
It's interesting. Yeah.
It's just like pretty blocker oriented. This the strategy by Mittens, I would just do exactly what he did with pretty much my whole range. I would just raise first 10. Coles has an extraordinarily high amount of ICM pressure on him. You can't really do anything about the situation. So I would just raise first 10.
Yeah.
And then probably see bet with range. But yeah, you'll get away with it.
Oh, someone in chat's already asking if you're still taking students or if you're booked after all my runs.
Oh yeah, no, I am taking students. This month is a lot better than last month. I will be honest. The last like month or two has been pretty difficult for me with getting to students when it comes to like because I've been playing a good bit and stuff and just balancing life and playing myself. I've been doing a good amount of playing, also a good amount of coaching, but I'm definitely open to taking new students now for sure.
Nice.
I think C Bauer, if you wanted to bluff, if you wanted to shove pre-flop, you could use like ace 3, ace 5. I like defending the ace 7 though.
Yeah. Somehow or another I didn't probably recenter my seat. Oh well.
Oh, that's all good. Yeah, no worries.
It's all fine. I was like, wait, how did I get moved over here? I probably noticed like later on in the screen recording. Or maybe I noticed now because like I was pulling a mouse over top of things. I don't know.
It's all good. We'll roll with the punches, sitting in a weird seat. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Nines with the ace king, huh? Oh, this looks like.
Yeah, this will be pretty standard, right? There's no decision point for anybody here.
Is nines the bottom for calls then to call off here? I mean, it was for about 10.
I'm not, because the amount of big blinds is so small. So it might wind up, if they have a correct RFI range to begin with, where they don't wind up opening like fives, they might wind up calling all the pairs that they open just because the price they're getting laid.
Mm-hmm.
I would, again, don't quote me on these things. Like, this is from pure memory, and while we have a lull, ICM is just such a pain to study because there's so many moving parts. Like, you move one stack size and then the whole thing kind of changes. So it's just very difficult to study. The idea is just picking up on heuristics. Of course, like with Chippy V2, studying post flop, you just want to pick up on heuristics, but those are way more repeatable and they happen over and over and over again once you learn them. Whereas with this, it's just more of a pain to study. But the good news with that is, if I'm like not trying to blow smoke up for myself, but I study quite a bit. If I'm saying that ICM is pretty hard to study, that means there's a big edge if you can study it effectively. You can gain a pretty nice edge on other people.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing we talked about, like when we did a couple, like when we've talked to ICM, is that you've told me that if other people aren't playing ICM properly, it actually is, it's more plus EV to then be a pip more cautious, like to make a mistake and like overfolding something a pip or two rather than like, not. And that's something that I always try to remind myself at like final tables or in like high end CS situations. Not that I want to like overfold, but like if I overfold, it's actually probably more profitable than if I make that mistake rather than the opposite.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Because if you study ICM in equilibrium, meaning like you're looking at solver playing against solver, it's pretty tight to begin with. But then once you say like, oh, this guy's going to stack off too wide and this guy's going to flat too much, exactly, like you just start to play so much tighter. Something I will say about these opens from mittens, I do like being wider, like when I'm a big chip leader on the button for sure, but they don't go crazy.
Yeah.
Especially before the button. So once you're cut off in an earlier position, just because you're a chip leader, you don't just start opening like 40% from middle position. It doesn't really happen as much.
How do you feel about this jam for? I was oops. I don't know. Did I just skip past it? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe go back a little bit.
Where did I go?
Yeah, this is a good way to do it, I think. And you were big
here.
Blind,
Yeah,
right?
here it is. Like for 24.6 bigs, I was unsure, like, because I was thinking about like the early position, like what exactly would be my, I guess like things like maybe ace 10 or like ace 9, like off or something like that. Like not all in 3 bets to balance like aces and maybe like kings. So I was not really sure. And so I think I elected to jam, which it probably isn't the worst, but it's like, it does narrow down the range of what can call me.
Yeah, I think jamming's good though with the value plus protection hands. So it's hands like jacks, tens, nines really stick out. Queens you can kind of lump in that. It is on the edge though, right? This teeters between like you have aces and kings and you not all in 3-bet, and then you just offset that with a bunch of trash, kind of like you said. I say a bunch, not really. You obviously don't want to overdo it. You want to be pretty cautious about how often you 3-bet bluff. But that would be the idea, right? You not all in with kings, aces, and then maybe like a king nine off or something. And then you shove like ace king off, ace queen suited, ace jack suited, and then jacks, tens, nines. I'm with you though. I would put queens in that same boat and just shove pre too. So I like that play.
Yeah, against the chip leader, I was like, oh god, if a king or an ace comes, like I just feel like I'm gonna have to overfold so much. And if they have an ace or a king and that comes, you know, like they just put so much pressure on me with like on like an ace 8-5 flop, you know.
Wind up flatting or anything, yeah.
Yeah. Would you ever consider 3-betting the ace 8 versus the queen jack, considering the ICM pressure? Or, I mean, you can't see the queen jack, but like.
So. Yeah, just because one, he raised an EP, and then two, he only has 14 big blinds, so you can't really. Your 3-bet's committing. So kind of by definition, you have to have really good hands. You can't have like the ace rag type bluffs that work if you're deeper stacked. I like the idea, the thought process. I just think the stacks were too short.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I would find the ace 8 off. 3-bet there.
4 is such a clean fold. Like 4s, 5s, 6s there, you definitely just don't want to even think about opening. I think even 8s is still a fold. I did look at one, and it was like a 50% fold. And after seeing that, I would just pure fold it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so like that, the 8s hand that I had near the beginning, like should have just folded that out. So that means like 9s is probably the bottom then.
Yep, yeah, 9s is the bottom. But like I said, the ace jack offsuit is still in there pure. It doesn't come out. And it just speaks to the blocker orientation of the opening ranges.
And does that mean ace 10 off is not an open?
Ace 10 off was a pretty heavy mix. It was more green than blue, if I remember correctly. So that was still in there quite a bit, but it wasn't pure. And then I think like king queen off was still in there. So again, just good blockers.
So just a reminder for chat, we're down to 7 if my math is correct, which means we're like the next ladder is $1,000. Just like if we're thinking about like, and then the ladder after that's about $1,500. The ladder after that would be $2,000. So those are the next 3 ladders. Like as like we look at like decisions and things like that. I was actually kind of surprised because I thought there'd be a lot more 3-betting at like this type of final table, like a phase high, like pre-flop. And now, I mean, like we can see the cards, so it makes it easier to see like maybe why there wasn't as much 3-betting. But I think initially I was a little surprised that there wasn't more 3-betting from people, like pre-flop in an ICM situation.
Honestly, I think it's the average stack size because if we look, like except for Gab and Mr. Mittens, who both have close to 40, everyone else is sub 27. So you're really just working with like 3-bet shoves, which really narrows the ranges of what you can work with. But if average stack was 40, 50 bigs, then yeah, you'd see a lot of 3-bets. A lot of non-all-in 3-bets, I should say.
Nothing like, you know, super deep final table. Everyone's sitting with like 40 to 50 bigs.
Yep. That king jack off from pennies, I think you could probably wind up folding and it's fine. Opening, it's not, I don't think, bad. But you're just at that exact stack where you have pretty much the most amount of ICM pressure on you when you collide with Mr. Mittens. So you kind of want to avoid those situations. Yeah,
I think that's now I had queen jack off on the button in that situation with like, I don't know, it was like little like 18, 19 bigs. Like that's probably still, that's an open if it folds to me, I would assume. Yeah. Oh yeah, the king queen suited shove from Seabauer with like 11 bigs from UTG. Like, are you? We just went through this like with Mario, like party poker had like min opens, but when you have like 11 to 12, are you still min opening with the 8.8 big blind stack with king queen suited, or are you just gonna jam it from like early position?
I think I wind up jamming once I have like less than like 12 or less is kind of my
Okay.
cutoff. Not with the range, of course. Like I still will min raise some hands, but hands like jacks, tens, nines, ace, king off, and then like the bluffs are going to be suited Broadway. So king, I say like bluffs. They're not. I don't know how to describe it, but like the offsets, I guess, is a better way of saying it.
Yeah, SMF was saying this time, but this person was second shortest versus Mario being the shortest.
Yeah, once it's second shortest, like you do want to kind of stop open shoving from EP. But again, I would have to check a model to see like what's the cutoff in terms of big blinds. I don't know.
I was actually when I saw that like back when I was like EP with ace queen off and I opened and Cole's at ace 10 off, I felt really lucky that they didn't decide to like 3-bet me. And again, I think it's because of the stack size. Like I'm probably like lucky that Cole's doesn't have like 40 bigs, because that's like if they decide to like 3-bet me with the stack chip distribution with a person with 7.3 bigs, I feel like I probably have to fold ace queen off there.
Yep.
Which like really would have kind of like sucked for me.
I wonder if Gab could have just open shoved for like 18 big blinds with king 3 off. That's something I'd be kind of interested in checking. Because it seems kind of crazy to big blinds, but you have a really good blocker.
Oh, this was an interesting spot. So we should probably, because
ace jack suited. Yeah.
So what are you doing here with those two stack sizes?
Yeah, what are the other two? You have 6.5 and 16.2. And we opened the button off of 18. I'm just trying to ground myself. It's really close. I mean, because obviously I just snap in ace queen suited. It's not really a question. I'd also call it. I think I just call ace queen off too. I think I wind up calling this, and I'm trying to like not say that because I can see it as ace 8 off. I know he's gonna have bluffs like this, of course, but that just because he can have a lot of bluffs doesn't mean we just start calling like ace 9 suited, for example. So our call off range is going to be held pretty constant, kind of regardless of what he decides to do, which I think is an idea that people don't really come around to in ICM. People think like, oh, say this guy's crazy and he's just jamming 50% of hands. That doesn't mean we just get to call like king jack offsuit, because that's not really good for us when he has like 6-5 suited necessarily. Because we have to pay that ICM tax. It's not really good for us to have like a 60% edge. It's not good enough. Based on there's a couple ladders in front of us with 6.6 big blind stack and 16. That being said, though, we still do have bottoms, of course. And if I had to guess, I think it'd be like 8s plus ace jack suited plus ace queen off plus. That'd be my guess. So like this is, again, it's really close. I don't fault you for folding. You do want to keep in mind, though, before you get to the situation, that you don't open the button too wide. This is a leak that I have where I'm very used to opening a really wide range on the button. Once you have 20 bigs, 18 big blinds, you can't just still open 40+%. You got to rein it in and have like a 25% opening range, probably even less. It's probably like 23 or 20 or something. So that will prevent you from opening 2 big blinds with a really wide range, get shoved on, and then fold all the time, right?
So essentially going like
reduce the amount of times you bleed 2 bigs.
So essentially going like a low jack range. That's probably what, like 20-25% like in that, like, or maybe like around that.
There's a good question in chat about flatting, because I was going to comment on this. The ace queen off under the gun. In ICM, there's really not much flatting, especially EP versus EP. I doubt there's going to be any flats really at all. I could be wrong. Maybe there are flats with like hands like jacks and stuff, but you don't really want to flat offsuit hands. And you kind of just want to take like ace queen off, maybe king queen off, and just 3-bet bluff them. It's kind of weird because like you're not really getting better hands to fold, but you just have really good blockers. So you just use it as a 3-bet bluff and a 3-bet folds. You definitely don't 3-bet call because it's not like it has worse for value. So It's a very good question though, and something that I think a lot of people wind up doing too much is they flat in a scenario like that, and you just can't really make money given the ICM implications because you can't bluff catch post flop.
That was when Gab had ace queen and Penny's had the queens, I think, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think my rationale when I folded here was like, I'm probably crushing Mr. Mitten's like range, like when they shove on me. But if do I even really want to take like a 70-30 in this situation? Because at 30% of the time, like, the ladder was, I mean, it's only like $1,000, but I hadn't binked off almost 20K in a night. So $1,000 felt quite large. I mean, it still seems quite large, like.
Yeah, it's something like it's going to take practice, but you'll definitely want to shy away from. When I play final tables, I really try my best to not look at the payouts.
Yeah.
And just play my game. Also, another option too that I didn't look into yet, but like, do we have an open shove range on the button there? I don't know. I don't think so, being that deep, but it's a possibility. I'm gonna just for myself real quick reference, and yeah, we actually do have an open shove range, but it's not that hand. It's more the offsuit aces, like ace king through ace 10 off.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like I would assume that like if I was shoving, it'd be like ace jack off, ace 10 off, like those types of hands versus like suited hands, which like open. I assume that's probably like I should have called ace jack suited, like based off of the like you ran an ICMizer.
That was a pretty wide shove with the ace 8 off there. I didn't really see what happened, but I just saw that he shoved ace 8 off for like a lot of big blinds, which I don't necessarily hate. It's a good blocker spot, and his blind be blind, so it can't be. I don't think it's that bad, but just it's good to see those things and pick up on them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was thinking like I would probably rather shove like, I don't know, ace 5 off, ace deuce off, ace 3 off, like ace 4 off in like middle of my range, like because I would much rather call like ace 8 off because like you get me to fold out like ace 5. Like I fold all my worst ace X, and like I'm only calling better ace X. So
that's a pretty sophisticated, I think, way of playing. Yeah, sorry, do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say like that's how I would break it out. Like the same thing with like well, I was in like it was like a couple weeks prior, I was at like a scoop, like a trophy event, like right on like the final, like we were getting that final table bubble or something like that, or like last final table, couple final tables, and like button opened, small blind flatted. Don't ask me why. And then I used like king 6 off as like a 3-bet squeeze bluff because I was like a bigger stack. And I think like from in the big blind, I think like those are types of like hands that I'm looking for to like from the big blind if I'm gonna like bluff. Because like ace 8 off shove is not for value,
Right. Yep.
I mean, at least I wouldn't classify it for value.
Nah, yeah, definitely bluff.
I don't know what they classified it as, but
I did look up a kind of similar situation. Honestly, there's probably more ICM in the scenario I looked at for 18 big blinds button open into chip leader. The bottom for calling was 7s was indifferent, so it's 8s. And then ace 9 suited was actually like pure call, ace 10 off. So it's a little bit wider than I thought. Okay. And again, whether you like make him I mean, obviously if you make him not have many bluffs, then like, yeah, we'll fold. But this model has a good amount of bluffs, and then if he has more bluffs in the model, it just doesn't change the call range. Like it doesn't mean we start calling ace 5 suited or something.
Gotcha.
Just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's good to know. Like, I mean, I think people are typically in our pool tighter with 3 bets. So like if ace 9 suited is like pure, then maybe it's like sometimes I think like depending on the player, like I don't know Mr. Mittens like very well. It's the first time I've ever played with him. But like, you know, like there are certain players I might pip up. I don't ever pip down, but like I might pip up a couple if they're like someone who doesn't 3 bet. And then I'm like, well, you don't 3 bet, so like this is never anything below ace queen, ace king. So why am I calling with ace jack here?
Yeah, I'm with you. And then also too, like kind of going back to what we spoke about before, if you lock the other players on the table, even outside of that hand, if you lock, for example, C Bauer to stacking off too wide, well then guess what? You could play tighter as a result.
Yeah. So it's not the worst fold in the world, but it's definitely not the best fold.
Yeah, you should know that, like, in theory, yes, it's a call. I think is the main lesson. It doesn't mean that it's bad, but just for next time, I think it's good to look it up.
Yeah, I mean, when I folded, I was like, this is probably a call, but I'd rather make a mistake of folding. I wouldn't have ever folded ace queen suited, that's for sure. Or ace queen off. Like, I don't think I ever fold those two. But ace jack, ace 10 started to seem like this could be a place where ICM says something differently. Because I know, like, ace 9, like, off is chip EV. So I was kind of trying to think 1 to 2, like, in the 1 to 2 pip, like, tighter range. And I think I went a little too tight. But that's, again, I could have easily lost that hand and we wouldn't be here. So
and to be honest, like, I would rather you be on the tight side when it comes to ICM when you have a middling stack, for sure.
It's probably much easier to clean up, like, oh, you're just a little too tight here than you're way too wide in ICM land.
And in my opinion, being too wide will cost. This is the thing. Is like being too wide will cost more money. If you're 1 pip too wide, will cost you way more money than being 1 pip too tight. I think that's facts, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I say facts and then I say my opinion, so it's pretty contradictory, but here we are.
Well, your opinion can be factual.
Could be. It was at the square rectangle rule. That's funny.
We have gotten a ladder. We're now like 5.1K is the min. So the next ladder is 2.1K, and then the one after that's 2.9K. So
yeah, if I'm pennies here, I'm probably just limping my whole range. It's just not a spot you really want to blow up the pot. I don't know if that's like great, but it's just with these two stacks, these two like middling to high stacks, you don't really want to collide. So you kind of just play a gentleman's game and just limp.
How do you like the min 3-bet here with the 8s? Or not the min 3-bet?
Gotta be the bottom, right? I don't love it. See, this is where, like, I mean, I don't hate it, right? Like, I'm cool, like, 3-bet calling it off. I would never 3-bet fold. Like, that's something that you don't want to do, is use this essentially as a bluff where you 3-bet fold this. Like, once you make this move, you just want to know that, like, hey, you have to stack off. Because I would, if you're going to do this and then fold, I'd rather just use ace deuce off, right? Where you at least have a blocker to what he's going to reshove with. To be honest, Coles' reshove is like, it's probably good, but I might have a hard time finding it, just knowing that, like, for the most part, I'm getting 3-bet called. I don't think people not all in 3-bet and then fold too much. They do sometimes, but I feel like, I know, like, the positions it's cut off for button. Like, in any normal scenario, if we're in Chippy V, then yeah, I'm loving it, but we're on a final table, so I don't love it as much. I don't hate it, but I wasn't loving it. Pretty good fold with the ace 3 off there. I say pretty good. It's actually really good. I think people might wind up doing something there, which would be pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, I think that, like, what, Chippy V, you're definitely shoving. Like ace 3.
Exactly.
And thank God
that's kind of what I mean. If, like, people just play Chippy V ranges on a final table, like, that's the difference. It's very, very different.
Yeah. And, like, I probably get called by either one of these hands. Like, say Mr. Mins doesn't have ace jack. Well, I don't know. Coles probably doesn't call with 4s, but you know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you might want to fold in.
But yeah, I mean,
yeah, from what I remember back in my New Jersey days, Coles is like one of the best regs, I think.
Yeah, he's got like over like 2.5 million in live cashes, I believe. So it's David Coleman. I didn't know who he was, but people were messaging me about him, that he's like a crusher. So I think he's a pro poker player.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I played like a decent bit with him back when I had no idea what I was doing.
I don't remember if I shoved this or folded. I can't remember. Oh,
I would want you to fold mainly, I think.
Fold?
Yeah.
I got lucky then with the min raise. Sometimes a bad play works out.
Yeah. It's weird because, like, my normal coaching, and this is for, I guess, people watching, like, I'm a massive proponent for playing very wide on the button. But the fact that we're on a final table, like I would never in a million years fold Jack 10 off on the button. But the fact that we're on a final table makes me play a lot tighter. Again, once you're the short stack though, like I don't know how good that is. Maybe you could just shove it pre-flop. That might be fine. You could use it as a min-raise fold. I don't hate that. Like you did, of course.
Yeah.
That was a good shove with the ace-8.
Yeah, I mean that was a. It's like ace-3 just runs in the jacks.
Yeah, yeah. That to me was like more or less pretty standard.
Yeah, I like to hit him with a nice hand. That's just like. I remember seeing that, and I was like, okay. I was like, well, that was awfully sportly of them, I guess. Like, I'm interested. I don't remember what happened this spot. I'm interested to see what like Coles does, because you're not really supposed to flat here, but they do.
Once he's 40 deep,
oh, you probably play some flats.
It can come in a little bit, and he's on the button. So like flatting's not awful here, but you just have to know it's not a wide range. It's going to be like 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks, queens. Like queens probably. This is another thing, is like flatting really high up, where people are very used to just like 3-bet felting queens. That's maybe not something that you want to do here. I could be wrong. Like maybe queens is good enough, but jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s would want to flat. Ace jack suited, ace queen suited. So like you do have some. But like we're no longer in the territory where we flat like king 10 suited. Like that's long gone.
Yeah. No,
and that could be like, weird for people to just fold like 10-9 suited. Just like
yeah. So you don't flat king 10 suited. What about like queen jack suited, king jack suited, king queen suited? Like king queen suited is probably like a 3-bet.
Yeah, I'd rather 3-bet them. Mm-hmm. I don't hate flatting king queen suited for sure, but just because again, that's a hand that you dominate more of their opening range with. Whereas with like queen jack suited, you're obviously dominating a good bit.
So, and like the suited, but like not like offsuit combos, or would you rather flat suited combos, and then if you're gonna like flat like versus like have some and then tease that out, would you like 3-bet offsuit and then flats? I'm not saying that's what people should do. It's just
I wouldn't flat. This is an interesting hand with the kings. I don't hate min raising. I would not flat any offsuit hands there, really, right? Ace king off, I'd 3-bet ace queen, king queen, ace jack, and then I'd just be done with the offsuit hands, right? I'm not going to flip king jack off. So I would just 3-bet them though. Like they just don't make good flats. So he flatted you and then flop one check.
Yeah. That's I was obviously going to check jam. I was like, oh, they got a big stack. They'll probably, and then they just. And I saw queen. I was like, well, thank God it wasn't an ace.
Yeah. I mean, no, I like checking the flop. I think that's good.
Yeah. And then I was like, well, I mean, if they have an ace, like, some random ace or something like that, I guess like I can at least extract some value if they're in a call with ace high. I was kind of surprised to see him fold like ace jack off, but look at this. Waking up with queens from the small blind.
There you go.
And holding. That was big for a ladder too.
Yep.
It's always nice. So up to 7.2K chats, meaning the next ladder is 2.9, and then the one after that is 4K. Oh, this was an interesting hand.
So you raise button, he defends.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could probably slam it on you if he wanted to. No, he doesn't have to do it every time or anything. And again, he'd probably use more like ace 5 off, ace 4 off sometimes.
What do you think about like the button check?
It's hard with ICM. Like ordinarily, we would just bet range on this board, or close to it, right? Maybe like 80%. Once you're in ICM and then you get a hand like this, that's a kind of an efficient check. I don't hate it. I'd still probably bias toward betting though, personally.
Yeah. And I was like so close to bluffing this off on the river.
I remember that. I was watching this hand on the stream. I do remember that.
And I was just like, And it just took so long in trying to decide because I rolled like, for people who watch the stream know, and like we talked about, like I use RNG and I rolled like super low. It was like 12. And I was like, fuck you, Kevin. I want to bluff this so bad. And then I was like, all right, I give in. It took too long. And I was like, all right, I can't do it now because I took too long. And I just checked. And then he flipped over an ace. And I was like, oh my, thank God. I was like, thank God. I was like,
I do remember that. That was good. I see Funny Money's question in the chat. I'll definitely get to it in a minute once we have a lull. Or maybe I'll just answer it at the end. That's probably better.
Yeah. Oh, this was a wild hand. So I just defended ace-8 instead of like shoving. Is that I mean, I think I'd be more inclined to shove like an offsuit ace than a suited ace is kind of how like I would break it down.
Yeah, and I think again, like the ace-5-3 deuce suited might be like a preference over this, and then flat this. Flat like ace-6, ace-7, ace-8, ace-9, jam like ace, maybe ace-10 through ace-king or something like that. Wait, do you mind if we go back?
Yeah.
I might have missed some of the action.
Okay, so it goes, they bet, I just call. My rationale here is like, so my rationale is like, if I raise, like what exactly, like my raise range, I'm not raising 3x, like in an ICM situation, like that seems wild. I mean, chippy V, like, sure, if someone wants to get kind of wild, like I guess like maybe see that. So I was like, I can only call here. And then since they were the opener, I don't play any like leads out of the big blinds. And then the deuce is like, again, like but like my range, defend range is tighter. It's not like I'm defending like a chippy V range with the ICM.
Yeah, you probably don't have 5-4 offsuit, basically.
Yeah. I might have 5-4 suited, but even that might be like, I don't know. I haven't looked at like ICM big blind defend range with these stacks like that. I guess if you told me that's a fold, I wouldn't be shocked, but
the suited hands that flop a straight will stay in. The offsuit hands will come out. So you still have 5-4 suited. And once you do call the flop though, like your range is so narrowed, right? You have trips, you have 3x, and you have 5-4, and you probably don't have 5 deuce and 4 deuce. Maybe you do. Actually, you're probably supposed to, because again, they can flop a straight, so they're probably in there. So your entire range here, like, I don't know if we would supposed to defend like king queen on this flop. I have no idea. I guess we could have pocket pairs too that didn't shove pre. I don't know how many of those we have. So you're working with like a pretty narrow range. You could justify raising the flop. I think it's fine. And if I did raise, I would just min click it. And then just use a bluff like 5-4. And then you could call too. Calling's definitely good. So, I mean, that's kind of where I would be at. And then the turn, yeah, definitely checking range. I wouldn't bet this card.
Yeah.
And then what, he checks back.
Yeah, which I thought was like really interesting.
Yeah.
That they then checked back.
And then we see a 5. And then I want you to pause it here and walk me through what you're thinking, because I think this is a pretty interesting spot.
Yeah. So like what I was thinking, I think I talked about this like on stream, is that like if I bet, I don't think I'm getting, like I've just like I've taken out all their bluffs, like all the things, like I didn't really turn my hand. I was always calling, but I just felt like, they have a bigger stack. They might, even though like wasn't sure like how much they were paying attention to like ICM stuff. So I thought they might be more inclined to be willing to bluff, thinking like, oh, they got a small stack, they're going to like bet. And I was like, they don't have a ton of 4x, because I was like, there's only one combination of ace-4 suited out there, and like there's 4-4. So there's like literally what's that, like 7 combinations of hands that like that are like nutted.
It could have like king 4 suited, but yeah.
Okay, that's true. But I guess I was thinking with the big stack on the button, do you really want to open king 4 suited when you're? But again, I just said like I wasn't sure like how much, and so I think I was like in between, like, do I bet, do I check? And I was like, if I bet, like it always looks like I have a 4 or I have an ace, and like they, like I don't know, I think they probably call me with ace 7 off. but I start to really narrow like what I can get value from. And I think I was like, I was just giving them some like if I had a 4, I definitely bet. Because and if I don't have an ace, like because I'm kind of blocking the range. There's only one other ace out there to, so it was like this is also kind of I was thinking I didn't talk about this on stream is like there's only one other card out there that like I want calls from with worse like, and then there's like a6, a7, the ends like everything else like I get beat by, and so it was like I think this was like my hand wasn't as like value heavy as it felt, even though I was never folding. So like, but like king, I wonder, like, I thought like, well, maybe king, queen, jack, like those types of hands, like pairs might bet, like thinking they have value and or trying to turn their hands into bluffs. Oddly enough, as that is.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like what I was thinking. Thoughts. Yeah.
My first thought is when we evaluate what we want to do here, and I know I've walked you through this, so this might sound repetitive, but I just bucket it into 4 categories, right? So we have the nuts, which would be boats, and then straights.
Oh yeah, boats.
That's like category 1. So we'll want to either mix those to check or bet them. They're kind of flexible equity, I like to describe them as, but here, like I just don't think that the opponent is really going to bluff that much, personally speaking. Because you defended pre and then you check call the flop. Like your entire range on this board is trips or a straight, really, right? Like I don't know, it's a weird spot because of that nature, because of how tight of a range you have. So I just don't really expect the opponent to put in money when we check unless they have a really strong hand. So basically what I'm trying to get to, and then there's category 2 hands, I didn't go over that, but category 2 would just be really strong hands that can't check raise. So like your exact hand, I would classify kind of as that, right? You're not going to check, he bets, and then you shove. Like that's never happening. Whereas if you have a boat like ace-5, you're going to do it every time. Which is why checking ace-5 is like more reasonable in my opinion if you think your opponent's going to bet. But my whole thesis here with those 2 hand classes, like category 1 and 2, is I just don't really see the opponent putting money into this pot too often. And I just think that we can monetize, exactly like you said, the kings, queens, jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s, 6s region. Not that they really should call that much. I think that they're more likely to call those hands than they are to bluff like jack 10. Or just like random air, just because it's kind of like what are they getting to fold? I'm shocked they even bet this hand now that we're looking at this, because like we defined your range. You have boats, trips that are better than this, and then straights. So personally, I wouldn't have put money into this pot if I was them. I mean, I can see the hands, so like I don't want to make it sound like I know everything, because I don't. But that's at least how I would think about it. So I would want to see, I think, block like bet 1.5 or 2 big blinds or something.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to block. And then what if they decide if they like raise, you just have to fold?
Yeah, I would have a really hard time figuring out a way of how are you going to structure a bluff range that bets a flop, checks a turn, and then shoves over a bet on the river. Like how are you bluffing? Like I don't know, you have queen jack of diamonds or something. Like I don't know, I just would have an extraordinarily hard time figuring out how people would do that as a bluff. And you can have stronger hands than this, right? This is almost like kind of the bottom of your range in a way. Like maybe you have like king 3 suited or something, or 5-3 suited. But like outside of that, you literally have trips and a straight. Like that's your whole range. So yeah, I wouldn't be concerned about like I bet he shoves and now I'm exploited or something. Like I would just probably bet fold.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, that's really useful. I do think that the block on the turn or the river would probably have been much better. I mean, they ended up did bet in, so I did get lucky in that sense.
Got the same amount of value pretty much. Yeah. Actually, more than I would have, because I would have bet 2. So
yeah,
we'll take that 0.9 to the bank.
And who knows? Like I could have bet, and they could have like gotten out of line and decided to think like a7 off as a hand I want to raise, which seems wild, but like you just don't. And then when I would watch the replay, I'd be so sick in my stomach if they would have like shoved the river and I folded the better hands in a situation where chips are like so important. I think also
this
like
was, if I remember correctly, this was a key hand, right?
yeah.
I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you like turn a set or something?
No, I think they might just fold. They might actually just fold here.
I would never fold if I were them. If they have gut shot here, I wouldn't fold this hand. Just given the fact that they're the big stack, right? Like they have more chip utility. Like they could.
I honestly probably would have thought about turning that into a check raise as the big stack with the gut shot. And like if they check raise, like if you're me, do you call like with the tens?
I wouldn't love it, but I'd probably call one just because your whole range is not like queen X plus. So like I'd probably have to figure out a way to defend some other hands. And I don't know, you could probably argue defending like a hand like ace 8 or 9-8 over tens just because you have more outs when you're behind. So if your opponent has ace queen and you have, I don't know, 9-8, you have more outs than pocket tens, for example. So I might use boarded pairs to defend more than like pocket tens, and plus tens block bluffs more. But
yeah, that was like one of the things. I don't know if I talked about on stream, but like when I c bet, I like thought about is like if they check raise, like I'm blocking like 9-10, which was like one of the primary bluffs, like and like 10-6 or like those types of things. And I was like, even like Jack 10, I think like I'm double blocking. Like it felt like I might have to fold. So I was like, people really folded a lot on like to like c bet. Like I'd noticed like people were folding a lot to like c bets on the flop. And so it was like, I think one of the reasons why, like, you talked about like the tens, it felt like after I c bet, I think I might have even said I felt like that was a mistake. And I got very lucky that I didn't get punished for that because like, what am I getting to call me really, like
you should still get quite a bit of value, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think that you still get called by 8x and 7x, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Besides that. But they could punish me a lot.
That ace king suited might have been a mistake. Just the way that they played the whole hand.
Oh, this?
We don't necessarily have to go back to it unless you're interested, but
no. No, I like missed that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We can keep going.
SMS says don't forget to, yeah, we'll answer. Schwibbs said he's gonna probably talk about either when we get to a lull or there'll probably be like a break.
Let's talk about it now.
Coming up.
Yeah, it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
All right, so yeah, the way I structure a session with a new student would be I just want to go into the database and do it full. If you have a good amount of hands, meaning 50K plus, preferably 100K, but if you have a good amount of hands in PT4, I just want to do an overall database analysis. It'll be a lot of information, but it's very helpful for me to learn. I can look at it within 15 minutes and know exactly how you play on basically every node of the game. From a math perspective, I can't see your bet sizings, but I can see what you're doing with your range. Again, I can't see like hand selection either. So we would have to dig deeper than that, but I can get an overall sense of how you play, and then pinpoint where I see the biggest deviations and the biggest room for improvement. And I can use a lot of different methods to illustrate that. But one of the biggest ones is using the actual database. And I have a bunch of filters where I can say like, hey, you fold all these hands on the button, but when you raise them, this is how much money you make. So raise these hands more is kind of the idea. That's very basic, but that's where it starts. So we do that first. So I get an overall idea like, okay, where are we at? What do we need to work on? And then from there, we have a very clear structured path going forward. Like, okay, we have all these pre-flop leaks. I'm basically going to tell you how to fix them. And then the rest of that work is kind of on you to go fix. We won't revisit it too much. And then we'll pick a couple flop spots. So say, for example, it's like, there might be like 3 different flop spots, say like check raise or defending versus bets or c betting in position or c betting in 3-bet pots. I don't know. There's a bunch of different nodes in the game, right? But I'll pick like the biggest 2 or 3 and we'll focus on that. Once we do all that work, your game will be very, very different and a lot better than where it was at before. I didn't see this 10s hand. I probably should have been paying attention.
It was like it was like a small like this person had just lost. Actually, this hand before this was kind of crazy. because they shoved and they had ace 3 off, and Mr. Mittens called off.
Yeah, not a hand you would want to raise on the button here, and then once you get shoved on, you definitely don't want to call it off. So the fact that Penny's lost his hand is pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, to get called is like really sad when they have that hand, and then for them to hit the ace. Well, they were ahead anyway. So this was like, then they were just all in, and instead of like they had opens, I was like, normally I probably would have just shoved like the tens, like, or like 3-bet, but I was like, I guess if somehow or another I end up losing this hand, Penny's wins and Coles beats me, I then like it's a disaster. So like I was in this weird spot, and I was like, so I think I just call and we check this down the whole way for the ladder. Like I think that's kind of how this is supposed to work.
That's a very reasonable way of playing it once you have someone all in for that short amount of big blinds.
Yeah.
I've never looked at a solve for something like that, but I think it's very, very reasonable.
I was like, could you imagine if I like called and Penny's had like aces, Coles had kings, and I had like tens, or like Coles had jacks, Penny's had queens, and the queens and jacks won, and I busted the turn. I suppose that he should bet the river there, right? I probably could have bet the river.
Oh, did you have a straight?
Yeah, I did. I probably could have bet the river. I probably should have.
It's just weird though, because like your opponent's just not incentivized to call you. So like, yes, you have the second nuts, and you block. You obviously block the super nuts, the king 10. Like, so you don't really lose much, and you could just bet folds because it's kind of whatever. But I just don't see there being a ton of EV and like you betting and them calling, because like you shouldn't really be bluffing and they shouldn't really be calling. I don't know. It's a really weird dynamic because the player's all in. So like, yes, you probably should bet, but I wouldn't really classify it as a mistake.
This was an interesting spot that like I thought about, like 3-handed, that maybe ace 10 suited, like it'd been better to 3-bet ace 10 off rather than ace 10 suited and call ace 10 suited here. So I thought that this was like one of the mistakes that I made on the final table, that like I could have. I don't think the ace 10 suited is a terrible 3-bet. Like I'm not saying this is like the worst thing I've ever done in my life, but I think that this is not like I should have flatted here versus 3-betting.
Yeah, I love that thought process. Yeah, you really just want to evaluate, okay, what are my alternatives? So calling is super competitive, and turning this into a 3-bet bluff where you 3-bet and then fold it to a shove, especially from this, like you didn't know at the time, but looking back, like this player's shoving quite a bit. You don't really want to use this as a 3-bet bluff because calling is so good with this hand, where you could just use ace deuce off for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, or like king 5 suited if you wanted, or some suited king or an offsuit king.
Yeah.
Same on the ace x side, but the more like true bluffs, I would do that personally. So I really like your thought process about how you said, like, I kind of rather flat this. I think that's good.
Yeah. And so what about the sizing? Like I use 6.5, but this probably should be like 6.3, 6.2. Like I feel like, I mean, it's sure it's not a terrible size, but like it might be on the little large.
I don't know. It's kind of tough. Because ordinarily when you 3-bet from the button, or sorry, the big blind, you want to use a pretty big size, but this is an area where like the pot's small because you're 3-handed. There's ICM, so I don't really know how big we want to go. I haven't really studied this. I am gonna look it up because I'm super interested.
Like
I think the size is fine. I'm not really critical. I don't really think like going small, like going to 5 big blinds, makes a ton of sense. Because once you start going small, what starts to happen is you incentivize your opponent to call you.
Yeah.
And you're out of position, and like the way that you want to bluff is kind of polarized, right? Kind of like I said before, calling's so good, so we don't really want to bluff ace 10 suited.
Yeah.
We'd rather bluff like more polarized, ace deuce off. So then in that context, I don't really want to make it 5 and then go post flop. I'd rather like actually have fold equity and make it 7 or something.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the size is bad.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe like 3 to 3.1 or something like that, or 3.1x would be better than. I mean, it wasn't that bad. Like it was like almost a little less than 3.2. So.
Whoa, this is so cool. I've never seen this. So GTO Wizard, they have, I'm looking at a 3-handed sim where they have like every raise size enabled for it's 3-handed for the big blind off of 30 big blinds. It's really cool. Because ordinarily they don't do this, but this is how you would test to see which sizes are the best. So they have 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, and 7, and then all in. And the most commonly chosen size is 7, and all the other ones aren't chosen. So 7 is definitely the move.
Okay. 7. So
yep.
Too small.
Yep. And ace 10 suited, just not to like hammer home the point too much, but ace 10 suited definitely does pure call, and then ace deuce off is pure 3-bet. So that's just the idea. You want to be a little bit more polar, but you correctly identified that, so it's great.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like in game, I was like, after I did it, I was like, well, that was fucking dumb. I mean, it's like it worked, but it was. I mean, it's not dumb. I'm trying to be aggressive, but like it was not the correct hand classification to 3-bet in that situation.
Yep.
Now,
good value bet on the river.
Yeah, thanks. So they limped pre with a7 off. Like my rationale for not ISO raising was that like it would be disastrous to have them like limp shove 6s or something like that. You know, and we talked about this as like that middle of the range. It's like disastrous to like have to like raise like 10-9 suited. Like I just check back instead of like raising, because like if they have 8s, they like limp trap or something like that. It's like terrible. Yep. I just had to fold all that equity where I'm like basically flipping, but now like I've just burnt off like chips.
Yep, 100%. No, it's awesome. That's really good. I'm with you.
I can't remember what I did here. Did I 3-bet?
I like it if you do. I like folding too. I'm indifferent between the two options.
I think I did 3-bet.
As long as you don't call, I think you can't go wrong. This is good.
Obviously, I went like well, I guess from the small blind, you can go smaller than the big blinds. But I think this is like a little bit too small.
It's probably fine given the fact that like the pot. This is another thing. Like there's less antes in the middle because you're 3-handed, right? So
that's true.
Ordinarily, if you're 8-handed, the size is going to be like 4x. You'll be 3-betting to like 8 big blinds. But here you tend to use smaller sizes because the pot is already smaller.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you c-bet this? I c-bet this board, and this was like one thing that I was like, wow, I don't feel like a check give up is like the best feeling in the world, but I did give up on the turn.
I would c-bet. I would definitely c-bet. I'd probably wind up barreling the turn too, actually.
Yeah. I thought about that. I thought about it, but then I was like, do they really call with a lot of like, if they like just totally bricked?
I thought of something while I was looking at this hand. You mind pausing this real quick?
Yeah. Pause so I can take it back.
Yeah.
You want to go back like here?
To your turn decision?
Yeah. This is.
Yep. This is great. So the way actually that we'd want to barrel here is you want to pick up diamonds and fade clubs. Once I looked down and saw you had the king of clubs, I really don't like barreling this hand. I would barrel king 10 sometimes, but it would have to be like more specific. Like I want the king of diamonds and the 10 of spades, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking to block their flush draws that are going to call me. So like if he has king 10 of diamonds, he's going to call. So if I have the king of diamonds, he can't have that hand. So that's great for me. Whereas like if I have the king of clubs, he could have called the flop with king queen of clubs and then would fold it on the turn. So I don't want to block those folds.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty specific with suit selection here. And I just use the phrase to myself, I want to pick up diamonds and fade clubs. So once I looked down and realized, like I was being lazy and just being like, oh, bottom of range, we have a gut shot, like let's bet. But I like to be a little bit more selective than that usually. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's really like that's a really good way to tease that out, is that you're blocking like the things that they then would fold on the turn. Or so I'm blocking, yeah, whatever. You just generate less fold equity, which is like when I study, like that's like one of the things. I think we talked about this in a session where I started to, especially in January, where I noticed like, and I don't think people do this, is that like missed flush draws aren't supposed to bluff rivers. They don't become bad like bluff cannons a lot of times because those are the things that you want people to like fold out.
Yep.
I think I could have chosen ace. I could have probably. I think the flat of ace nine off is fine, but I think it's funny that I mistakenly three bet ace 10 suit and I was like, oh, ace nine. I think I learned from my mistake and was like, yes, don't three bet ace nine off here. Just call.
Yep. Yeah, that's good. I'm with you. Be pretty standard defend for calls. He'll check. You should probably mostly be betting this board with this hand. I mean,
Yes.
I don't know how often we want to check with our range, given the fact that there's some amount of ICM three-handed. I will say though, there's a lot less. So people get to these situations and think like, oh, this is where the biggest pay jumps are. This is where the most ICM is. That's not actually true. There's a lot more ICM when you're nine-handed, eight-handed, seven-handed than when you're 4 or 3. And there's obviously no ICM heads up because you're just playing for. There's no more additional pay jumps. There's only one jump, so there's no ICM.
Well, unless it's like a 30K pay jump, and then maybe, and like you get $0 for second.
That's funny. But yeah, like with that being the case, I forget what hand I was speaking to, but anyway, yeah, there's less ICM three-handed, so it's kind of it still should play an important factor to your decision making, but it's less important than if you're eight-handed, for example.
How do you like this ace 4 off three bet bluff from the small blind?
Yeah, I like it. It's pretty aggressive. And if you could see the cards up and see he was raising queen deuce off on the button, then I'd do it every time.
Yeah.
I would never mix it. I would just do it every single time.
Oh, I tried to limp trap this, and in hindsight, I was like, it was. But I knew that like if I limp trapped, that way that this person would like almost never have ace X. So I really wasn't worried about ace X. I think I got a little greedy here and got a little lucky. Once the board paired, I don't think I should have like. I was betting for value from Jack X. That was like the worst. Like after that hit, I was like, all right, that was fucking stupid. I was like, you're so lucky. Like, what a fish. I got called.
I remember seeing that hand, and I was almost like, I'm just thinking about the other player's perspective. Like, oh, why did he call? Like, I mean, you can definitely have bluffs, right? You can have one speed bluffs and miss straight draws. So I get it, but like, I mean, he could just call with ace X and trips, and it's probably fine. Like, he doesn't have to call all of his Jack X. Although I will say, calling Jack Deuce there is going to outperform calling Jack 10 because Jack Deuce unblocks all the buffs. But.
Oh, and then this hand, like I kind of like made up for where I was like sneaky with my check back on the turn, and then went for value on the river.
Yeah, once he checks the river, he should be. The range that you lose to is really just dense traps. Like he shouldn't really check a hand like ace 9 or ace 8. So you lose to traps. That's going to check raise you, or you just win. You beat like king jack or something. So I think this bet is really clean. I like it.
How about the sizing? Like I went 53%. Like I think I thought 53 or 83, but I thought if I went 83, like I really just like, I know like, you know, a lot of times you want to on the river, like you go bigger, but I thought in this type of situation where stack depths and like how much pressure there is on like losing chips that like if I went 83, like I'm really like consolidating the range to some like everything that would call me is going to be better.
Yeah, I'm with you. 83 is probably not bad. I do like half pot a little bit better though, especially because you checked back the flop. I would VPip here. Oh, nice, you did. Let's go. That's good.
Yeah. They limped and I checked back. So
yeah, I went limp check. This board gives you nothing to defend with. He bets small relative to the pot. Like you have to continue with quite a lot of hands. Backdoor flush draw is going to qualify, so we call. So that's great.
Well, and gut shot.
And then here, I would definitely bet.
And they check, and then this one I decided to go larger because, you know, like because I'm betting the turn after calling the flop, whereas like the last time I bet turn, and now it was like the hand classes just seem like much weaker outside of like the traps, you know.
Yeah,
on that river bet.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say before. The ace 5, you have a pretty like relatively weak range as far as your value bets go. You don't have the nuts, right? Like you just have kind of thinner value bets, so going smaller makes sense. Whereas there, you called the flop bet, you can have trips, you can have jack X, you can definitely go bigger. So I think that's good.
Yeah. It's funny because I was like it did when I saw the cards up replay and like knowing that David Coleman's like so good at poker. And I was like, oh wow, I outplayed David Coleman in one hand. I can always hang my hat on that. Where we had the same exact hand. And I mean power position. Like if our positions were switched, like he would have like taken all the chips. So it's not like I really like outplayed him or anything like that.
But I mean, hey, you made the call.
That's true.
On a board where most people would wind up folding because they look at their hand, they're like, "Oh, I have nothing. I fold." That's most people's way of playing poker. So
backdoor flush draw. Got I got 7 5s. Like can make a pair. Could make a straight. Like, there's plenty of possibility out there. This is what you learn when you work with Schwibbs. Power of possibility. Also, I learned that like in this position, like I never like limp really. I just like with ICM, we went through this like in the small blind, like versus big blind. Like you don't really, there aren't like a lot of limps in like ICM final table type stuff from the small blind.
Yeah. I remember I'd put together that Excel file to figure it out. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. How do you like the 5s jam?
So you really, yeah, I think that's pretty good. You're gonna want to jam like the low to mid pairs. I'm curious if there's limping once we're like 3-handed. Yeah, there's a little bit more. Because there's less, again, it's just because there's less ICM, but if there's like 6-handed, yeah, there's probably not gonna
be here's the old 5 deuce off, big blind ISO. We got him. Let him dominate the ace deuce off. two hands.
You know what's funny about that?
What?
You know what's funny about that is ace deuce off. I on a scoop final table limp folded it too, and the second I folded it, I was like, what am I doing? I had an ace blind v blind. It's just funny because it like I see Coles do it and I had like the same exact thing happen to me. I wonder if he had the same reaction or if he was just like, Beam Doctor's probably not raising enough, I fold.
And he probably watched the cards up replay and he was like, who does Beam Doctor work with as a coach? So this is the defense. Mittens raised the button.
Yep, yeah, it's a good defend.
And I'm in the big stack here, and I was like, well, my 8 needs protection from like random overs. If they have a jack X, if they call this, then like I'm going to tread lightly on the river. So this is like kind of like my decision making.
Yeah, the sizing's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a.
Also, I blocked Queen Jack. Yeah. So I was like, I felt better about like when a Jack came out that there was less combinations of hands that they would have that had Jack X. He just went ahead and shoved their 6s. Nice shove.
Yep. Probably want a betting range on this board.
Yeah. This feels like a standard. I got more, like significantly more chips than everybody else. So I'm always going to see bets like small, most likely. And although I think you could probably, I'm not studied enough to be able to say like, oh, I know exactly which hands I should be betting like larger and smaller with. So I try and simplify my game tree on the flop for the most part.
Sometimes. Yeah, it's definitely a good idea. Plus once you're like shorter SPR, so is 25, 26 big blinds, there's going to be a little bit less large betting on the flop. Not none, you'll still have some of it, and that type of board is just not connected enough.
Like ace, king, 5, like I would probably large bet my entire range, like 53% to 80%, because like they don't have aces or kings really. I mean, they might have aces, but they're probably not like, they don't have ace king. So like that type of like board, I would probably like think of bet larger. You just bet in range.
It's been limp check here.
Oh, yeah, this is blind v blind. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Very good. But I would definitely bet this hand class for sure. I'd mix check with some 10x. I wouldn't just bet all of my 10s, but most of them can bet. I would definitely bet that one. Like a hand like 10 deuce, you might want to think about checking back.
Yeah, it makes sense. It was all going well at this point in time.
Yeah, we're swimming here.
Yeah. Meanwhile, over on the final table low, who knows what was happening? I can't really remember. I remember barely anything that happened from that table until after I busted this tournament. So
You lost like a pretty big hand with pocket fives, I think, where you made a set. Do you remember
no,
that?
I had a boat. Yeah, I had a boat, and they three outed me for a bigger boat.
That was wild.
It was down to like 6. So I watched that in the Cards Up replay, and I was like, oh, that happened. I totally forgot that happens. Like, I didn't have any recollection. I was down to like 6.5 to 7 bigs on the low table. I think I thought to myself, well, this tournament's over. I'll just, I mean, not over, but like, it's not looking good here. Good thing I have the high to focus on. And then
Yeah, you're like, I'm winning the high. Don't mind me on the low.
Oh, in the high. Who cares about the low? No, not who cares about the low.
Oh yeah, real quick, I'm gonna go. Well, I guess you're in a hand, so let's see. Probably when raise pre, he defends. You see that flop, he calls.
He's in the small blind. He limped. I just checked back.
Thank you. Yeah. So when limp check, or he raised and you checked.
Yeah. No, he limped and I checked back. Would you have ISO? Would you have ISO raise the big blind limp? Yeah, I didn't.
Not with this hand class, I don't think.
And after he like called the turn, I was like, what hands am I really beating that he calls the turn bet with? And I just saw him like be like sneaky with the check out of position with the like ace X and like check both, like check call, like turn, and then like check the river. So I thought like ace 4 was a better like check back on the river after betting the turn.
Yep. I'm with you. I think that's good. It's kind of a tough spot with queen 5, honestly. Not like now. Like obviously he's gonna shove and you're gonna fold, or I guess he might call. I don't know. But I was just thinking pre-flop. I was like, what do we want to do pre-flop? I guess we want to mostly raise, or we could limp. But
yeah, I mean maybe for 12 big blinds effective, like you can start to limp shove. Like I think Jaeger says 3x then check here. I think he's talking about the ace 4 suited hand.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Pre-flop.
Yeah, I need to pay a little bit more attention. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the rationale for like not, I mean, if you're talking about 3x the pre with the ace 4 suited, the rationale for that is that like you have like so much equity with that. It'd be like terrible if they're like limp trapping. So if you like raise and they shove and you have to fold that hand, this is what Schwibbs is like told me. I don't know, Schwibbs, you can correct me. Is that like you've literally just like torched like a ton of equity.
Yeah.
You'd rather be much more polar.
Yeah. You could debatably like shove it pre-flop. I thought about that. But there's probably not much shoving. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. That's an interesting one that I'm not sure on.
Here's the king 6. I use the king 6 off as like the 3-bet bluff, and they just yeeted the ace 10 off. Oh, it went 3x with a7 off. He 3x the a7 off. There we go. That's right. And then check flop. Right. Yeah, he didn't. He raised and I defended.
He raised, you called. Yeah, that's good. Okay, that's cool.
How do you like the ace 10 off yeet in that situation? Are you?
Yeah, he doesn't have that many big blinds in his 3-handed. It's tough. It's kind of tough to pull off, and it's funny because I'm thinking about me or you too. Like we have pretty similar big blind 3-bet strategies now. Like I don't really love shoving into the composition, into that range composition, like because you're not getting called by anything worse, right? Like we're polar, we have either better or we fold, so like it doesn't feel great, but you have a good blocker, so it's probably fine.
You saw the cards in your glasses. Probably. Yeah, thanks, Jaeger. Sorry about that. Forgot that A3X. Yeah, Cole's. I think that was also part of the reason why I checked back the river, is because like it felt so trappy. I mean, obviously, like they had a decent hand, but it did feel like, I don't know. I got weird. Oh, this is.
Oh, that's a tough spot for Coles.
Oh, I don't think I was even necessarily paying attention when this hand happened. I don't know what I was looking at, which is unusual because I was paying like a lot of attention to this like final table.
Does find the call and loses. Wow. Yeah, I don't remember that.
And then we were supposed to, they wanted to make a deal. And then we went to the deal and they got upset because they felt like they weren't getting enough money, but they had to set aside 2.5K for the first place winner. And I think they were thinking they were going to get like that part of that money. This is the first time I've ever asked if someone won a deal because there was like, we had to play out for the trophy and 2.5K set aside. Normally on stream, I wouldn't set aside, but yeah. So it was like, I would have made like an extra, I think like $1,000 or so. But then they were like, oh, I thought I'd get more money. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's also to the poker karma gods. You'll get that 1,000 back at some point.
Yeah. Well, you know, I came back and won the low. Right. So I mean, maybe in a way it already came back. And I won a WSOP main seat just like 4 days prior to this. So
oh yeah, that's right. That's cool. That's unbelievable.
Can't complain
that's really
too
like
much.
The dream.
Yeah. So I've won $40,000 plus from pre-rolls this year in like seats and tournament packages, or in the last like since November, which is kind of crazy because I won a PSPC Platinum Pass and then I won a WSOP main event seat.
Yeah, that really is nuts.
It's like super.
Yeah, wild. I got to final 4 for one last night or like a couple nights ago. I want to say. Okay. Not last night. I didn't wind up winning though.
Watching this heads up cards replay, like I was like, oh my god, they folded Queen Deuce suited. I was like,
yeah, that's sad.
Yeah,
you just raised, or he limp folded. Is that what happened? No, he just folded.
No, yeah, he just folded. He didn't defend his like big blind at all. Like I just raised like I think to 2, and they just like folded. I was just like,
yeah, it's pretty wild because based on what we saw, like them willing to open ace-3 off like 5-handed or 7-handed or whatever, off of like 17 bigs on the button, and then just like fold Queen Deuce suited heads up.
Yeah,
it's not funny.
What do you think here? Just check raise situation, or
yeah, I mean, yeah, check raising's good, calling's good. You can't really go wrong with either.
And so what if they decide to just rip it in? You call in and looking for the 5, the club.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the problem with check raising. You kind of have to make that decision before you do it. Where like I might wind up using the really good combo draws, like the open-ended straight draw, or like just like the ace high flush draw, where like I can raise and then just call it off when he shoves because we're probably flipping. Whereas with like the gut shot, the weak gut shot and a flush draw, like you probably don't really want to raise, call it off, because you're always dominated in some way, right? Like you never actually have 50% equity. I don't really think. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, you're just always behind, so you probably don't want to raise, call it off. And then in that context, you don't really want to raise, fold that hand, so maybe you should just call.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That makes sense. I mean, I'm sure like check raising can't be the worst thing in the world, because like I was like, well, I got 7 high, you know. I mean, I got a ton of equity. It does feel bad, but I just like I don't know. Based off of like now playing with this person, I don't think the check raise was terrible because they're going to overfold, and 2 like they're just going to like probably just jam it in, like, and I know it feels terrible, but I'm like, okay, like I could have just called, but I don't think they jam with like a pair. I don't know. I don't know if they would have. Actually, interesting. So maybe it is bad to do. Tough to say. SMS has got a feel for him. Poor guy below 50. I mean, I am running like 50 flips below on the year, but you know, like as I've learned from working with Schwibbs, you have to build your stack big enough that you can withstand losing flips. I've done that a couple of times.
You know, you also have to do when you track the flips, you have to track how much equity each flip is worth, because what if you just win all the biggest ones and lose all the small ones?
Yeah, that is. I won a lot. I won all my flips on this night. except for if you well, I don't count them as a flip, but the last hand was like 55-45 basically, or 56-44 that I lost. So all except the last hand, which actually I have questions for you because I know like what I did was correct, but I want to pick your brain about.
Yep.
The last hand evaluation, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I remember it, even though I did watch it. I'm being honest, I don't remember the last hand, so we'll see.
It's fine. We'll see it in just a little bit, chat. Like 13 minutes.
I guess I will finish. I didn't finish answering that one question. Unless you have questions on this game or something. The one about the coaching, like I just want to finish saying, once we have that roadmap, like your game is going to be so much better because you're giving all of your post-flop decisions, you're feeding with really good pre-flop inputs that you can understand and execute, right? Like you have a really solid idea of what you're doing pre-flop. So you're not lost when it comes to post-flop. Even though it might not feel like you're lost now, if you don't have it nailed down to a T, I use this expression, like you can't kind of like know. You have to exactly know what you're doing. Now, I don't know exactly what I'm doing in every single spot. That's impossible. But like I have a really good handle on it. And that's just going to make all your decision making easier. And then once you're there, like we go through a couple of really important flop spots, that's going to feed into your turn and river decision making. So that's kind of the way I structure it. I forgot to finish off on that note, but wanted to say that. So this is the hand? Or maybe
no, I was actually kind of surprised that they folded. I'm not surprised they folded Jack 10 suited, I guess. Probably like in the situation, I wouldn't have called Jack 10 suited because like if you lose.
I don't think I would have either for 20 bigs.
Yeah.
Because you're not, I mean, you're flipping or you're behind, right?
Yeah.
Essentially. So.
Or dominated, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. How do you feel about the ace nine? Was the ace nine off like I mean, what I had like 15 to like 17, 18 bigs. I think somewhere 16, 18 bigs. They raised like.
Yeah. Yeah, heads up is pretty wide ranges. I think you could just shove any ace. Yeah. Like even ace deuce off, you could just shove. I think all the offsuit ace X, if I had to guess, you probably want to shove. Limp shoving this is decent. You could also raise it pre-flop, obviously.
Well, I think I think I'd started to like limp like anything 20 big blinds and under, and then they got me. I value cut myself here. Oh no, I didn't. I checked it back. I was thinking I value cut myself. I was really shocked that they didn't play the nine more aggressively. Like I was like, that's what I was remember at the other hand. I was like, what? They didn't like barrel the turn. Like what was? I was like, what is happening? Like.
I budget bet range on the board.
Yeah, well, I like limped. Yeah, probably like even though you limped, like if I limp free, like I should just bet range.
Yeah, I mean this board's just really hard to defend, and they have a really wide range, so you could just take the overfolds. Like for example, if you bet one, mathematically speaking, he has to defend like 30 to 40% of his range, and on that board, it's impossible. Like he's probably gonna wind up folding 60 or 65 or 70, so or maybe even more than that. So you can just get away with overfolds. It's fine.
Yeah. Always an ace. That's what they say. Always an ace or a king.
Although yeah, this is tough heads up. Like I was working on out of position 3-bet pots earlier today, but this is just like way different than heads up 3-bet pot when you're out of position. So
yeah,
I wouldn't really know exactly what to do. But betting the flop is probably decent. Checking the flop is also probably decent. I don't know. It's an ace high board though, so maybe you do just want to bet range.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. Well, they've been so tight that it was kind of like I knew that they checked back, they didn't have an ace.
Yeah, that helps.
And so it was like, oh, like they're not that aggressive. So if they bet, like I probably call, but like call one, and if they decide to barrel again, I know that they have an ace X. Like that's kind of how I felt. Like that like exploitatively, I could probably check that, and like whereas like other players, like I probably would have Not.
Oh, there you go. The seat change.
I did finally see change it. Yeah, this is another one where I think I like thought about, like I hadn't seen them like 3-bet a lot heads up, and then all of a sudden they 3-bet. And of course, when you see at ace 9, at ace 7, you're like, oh damn it. But I don't know. Do you call that there? Probably was a little tight.
Like my baseline would be to call. If your thesis is like I haven't seen them 3-bet, like I haven't, and really like, I mean, we saw them shove some kind of wide hands, but like I don't think we saw showdowns of that. Like if I fold there, I would want you to know like that's definitely pretty exploitative. That's pretty hard to like raise, fold, an ace heads up because the ranges are so wide. Like it's very far off from GTO. But again, if the other side of the coin is like most people don't 3-bet bluff nearly enough heads up, which is surprising because you would think it's kind of easy, but it's really not that easy to find all the bluffs. Like I don't hate the folds. I don't like it either though.
Yeah. I don't think I really love like the fold.
Yeah. And something for people to know, if you look at heads up ranges, you'll definitely see a lot of limping, but just keep in mind that's against the solver and on the other side. Raising is definitely quite good because, like I said, most people won't 3-bet bluff enough from the big blind, and then they'll also probably overfold a little bit pre-flop. So like those two things combined make raising a little bit better than limping sometimes. Just important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think like once I got below 20 bigs, I was like, well, I'll just take a limping strat, and then above 20 bigs, I was going to raise. I don't know why I split it off like that. Yeah.
I hope you bet the river.
I did. Yeah, nice. I did.
Let's go. Good stuff.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, I've seen them check top pair, but I was like, how can I not bet 10x second pair like heads up for value, you know?
Yep. There's also just so much variance in heads up. It like, I know it shouldn't, but like in a way, sometimes it can kind of tilt me a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't play heads up.
Yeah, people were like really good at heads up. I should have like I was like, like why did I take this like limp strategy? It's like
and then the other thing about the limp strategy is it's really good if if you're looking at a solver, if the other solver on the other side is going to then raise you all the time with like a bunch of hands, then like limp shoving is going to be amazing. However, if people are just going to like check it back always, then limping with hands like 7s, 8s, 9s is going to be less good.
Okay.
Not that it's bad, but it's just that's something to keep in mind where
makes sense.
Like, if you do wind up looking up some solves, like you don't want to just take it at face value. You definitely want to understand like what factors are going into the decision to either limp or raise or whatever. Yeah, pre-standard defend and then check fold. I think you want to defend like basically any hand that has one spade. Surprised he didn't bet the flop, but to each their own.
And I mean, based off the way they were playing there, I was like, well, this is like, I mean, unless they're like super nutted, I can get them to fold like all their cards that have like so much like equity against me.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think I would have found the trigger with that hand class, but I'm not saying it's bad. Like I'm giving you credit. I think that's awesome that you're finding bluffs, especially heads up. Like people are going to struggle to defend. Case in point, like he checks back king high and then didn't defend king jack on turn. I don't even know if it would be a pure defend, but like obviously it doesn't really matter if you have 7-8 off or whatever. Like you're going to get a lot of overfolding on the turn.
I still can't believe they didn't barrel the turn with the 10-9 suited.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they want to be more polar. I'm not sure.
Oh, this is the last hand.
Let's see. Oh, I do remember watching this. Yeah, I don't really think that you get like, again, as a default, I don't think that your default should be to fold here. He shoved, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it great? No, it's not like amazing. But again, your heads up, your equity versus range is going to be pretty good. Like you're going to have, like we see here, 43, or you're going to have close to 50% a lot, and then you could be dominating him sometimes because you have king queen, right? Like he could definitely shove. Like what's stopping him from shoving king 10 suited here or something? I don't know. Not saying that he will every time or something, but like you're just pretty high up. So, but again, like on the other side of the coin, when we had the ace 9 off, your thesis could be, haven't seen him bluff too much, but like I don't know how good of a thesis that is, right?
Yeah.
We've seen some more wild plays, so it's debatable. I don't know. Did you look this one up? Because I could just look it up right now.
No, I haven't looked it up. I mean, I assume that this is a pure call with king queen suited, like for 20 bigs. Like you're never folding king queen suited. I would assume king jack suited is a call. King 10 suited heads up might even be a call. I would assume
it goes down to king. Yeah, it goes down to king 9 suited.
That would have been like my guess. Is like king 9 or king 10 suited is where they
pure calling.
Yeah.
And the range that it's up against, actually, as far as bluffing goes, I mean, it's really like pocket pairs, ace high hands, and then there's queen 6 suited that's fully weighted as like the main bluff, and then king 5 off, king 4 off, or like semi-weighted. But it's not like, to me, the 20 big blind shove is not really even like bluffing that much. It's mainly like the low pairs and the ace high hands, and like some amount of queen 6 suited and king 5 off. Now, if we take those out, like, will king queen suited still be in there? I think so, probably, to be honest. I think it's going to be pretty hard to pull that hand out. So I think calling here is like pretty good. It's not great. I'm not jumping up and down about it. But yeah, I don't think folding it is.
Yeah, I actually if I was playing like heads up versus David Coleman, I would have felt like really great about king queen suited. But thank you, Schwibbs. And Schwibbs, like he said, is taken. Like he's open for new students. So if you drop his info one more time, get at him. You can tweet at him. If you want to know more, like you can like DM me. I will certainly tell you about my experience with working with him and continuing to work with him. He's fantastic. I cannot speak highly enough. I know every time I have a big results, I always talk about like I owe a lot, and I do very much owe a lot of my success and where I am as a poker player to Schwibbs and his coaching. Schwibbs, thank you so much for your